I get it, there's nothing more frustrating than scrolling through a glossy listing, seeing a beast of a machine with a 16-core Ryzen, a 360mm liquid cooler, and a sleek case, only to end up with a box that feels like a mismatch for the real work you do. I've spent the last few weeks swapping parts, running a couple of video editing pipelines, and testing a handful of simulation builds just to see if this Adamant custom workstation lives up to the hype. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of person who actually needs a machine like this. If you're a freelance VFX artist juggling 4K renders, an engineer running finite element analyses, or a data scientist training models that chew through RAM and CPU cycles, the 16-core 4.3 GHz Ryzen 99950X paired with 32 GB of DDR5 is exactly the kind of raw horsepower you've been begging for. For a typical office worker who only needs Microsoft Office, web browsing, and occasional Zoom calls, this is massively overkill and will feel like you're paying for a Ferrari when you only need a commuter car. Now, the strengths. The first thing I noticed was the cooling. The 360mm AIO liquid cooler sits snugly on the X870 Prime motherboard, and after a full day of rendering a 10-minute 4K video with heavy color grading, the CPU temps hovered in the low 70s Celsius. That's a solid margin compared to many air-cooled builds that start flirting with 90°C under similar loads. The low temps translate into a quieter experience, too. The pump whirs faintly, but the fans rarely spin up beyond a gentle breeze, so you can actually focus on your work without a constant hum in the background. Storage is another win. The 1TB Samsung 990 EVO PCIe Gen 4 SSD hit sequential read speeds in the ballpark of 7 GB per second in my quick tests, which means loading massive project files, swapping large datasets, or booting Windows 11 Pro is practically instantaneous. I also appreciate the NVMe slot being on a dedicated M.2 lane, so you won't see the throttling you sometimes get on motherboards that share bandwidth with other PCIe slots. Connectivity is future-proof. Wi-Fi 7, 802.11b, is still a novelty, but the Adamant board ships with a 22 configuration that already shows noticeably better latency and throughput in a crowded apartment building than my older Wi-Fi 6 rigs. Bluetooth 5.4 is there for the latest peripherals, and the inclusion of a USB 4 port gives you a high-speed lane for external GPUs or fast storage enclosures handy if you ever need to expand beyond the integrated graphics. Speaking of graphics, that's where the machine starts to feel a bit compromised for certain users. The build relies on the Ryzen's integrated GPU, which, while decent for basic desktop tasks, will choke on anything beyond light video editing or casual gaming. If your workflow involves Adobe Premiere's GPU-accelerated effects, DaVinci Resolve's color grading, or any 3D viewport work, you'll want to budget for a dedicated card. The good news is the chassis has room for a full-length GPU and a 850W power supply, so adding a mid-range RTX 4060 or a professional workstation card later on won't be a nightmare. Another practical point, the machine ships with Windows 11 Pro pre-installed. For most creators, that's fine, but if you run Linux-based tools or need a dual boot setup, the process of wiping the drive and reinstalling can be a bit of a hurdle because the UEFI firmware is locked with a vendor password until you contact Adamant support. I had to email their tech team, and they responded within a day with the password. It's not a deal-breaker, but it adds an extra step that a DIY builder would avoid. Now, let's talk money. The price tag on this custom workstation lands you in the $2,500 $3,000 range, depending on configuration and any regional taxes. For a machine that already includes a high-end CPU, DDR5 memory, and a Gen 4 SSD, that's not unreasonable, but it does sit at the upper end of what most freelancers are willing to spend on a single workstation. The value really comes from the time you save. In my tests, a 30-minute export that took a standard 8-core desktop 45 minutes on a mid-range build shaved off roughly 15 minutes here. Over a month of daily renders, those minutes add up to hours of reclaimed productivity. If you're billing by the hour, That time saved can offset the upfront cost faster than you might think. Who should walk away? If you're a gamer who wants the latest AAA titles at ultra settings, this isn't the machine for you. Integrated graphics won't cut it, and while you can add a GPU later, you're paying a premium for a chassis and cooling system you'll never fully leverage. Also, anyone on a shoestring budget looking for a good enough desktop for office work will find cheaper alternatives that meet those needs without the liquid cooler and the premium warranty. On the flip side, if you're already juggling multiple high-intensity workloads, say, a mix of 3D rendering, video editing, and data crunching, and you value a quiet, thermally stable environment, the Adamant